And today we have our 20th Barichara update, which is pretty awesome, considering I think we've missed 4 weeks, 4 different times where something came up on the day and that we couldn't do it. So, we're like right at 6 months of doing these. And it's just been incredible to capture and follow. Like, as I just look back at the titles of these, as you'll see, the title I have for today is Weaving Tapestries of Projects. And we're going to talk about how we're weaving tapestries of projects in Barichara and then also in other landscapes and doing a fractal thing across levels. But I'm just sort of blown away as a participant in the process, even though I host the calls. I'm just like, I'm blown away by what's happening. And today what I really want to do is, share with all of you sort of 2 key ideas or 2 key perspectives. One perspective is, how do we leverage resources moving into a landscape to create governance and cooperation across projects within the landscape? So that's going to be a theme we'll look at today. And then the other theme will be, how do we begin to engage conversations where there are different landscapes with really different cultures that can create their own frameworks of collaboration within their landscapes and begin dialogues with each other because of what happened in Colorado earlier this month. And so I'm really glad that Benji and Penny are here, because I will not be talking very much about what happened in Colorado, because that would be a whole conversation by itself. But I think it'll be helpful to have some perspective of what happened from Penny and Benji to support what we're talking about today. And so I'd like to begin, first of all, I don't think we're going to get very many people here today because in the US it's Thanksgiving. So a lot of people will just watch the recording later. But what I really want to do is share with you, I'm actually really happy with this slide deck that I put together this morning. I'm thinking it might be 15 or 20 minutes of presentation, and then we'll have time for discussion. So I have plenty of room to talk about what we're seeing here. And I want to stress that those of you who are more familiar with what's going on in Barichara, who know more of the details of the projects involved, will have a richer sense of what we're talking about today. And what I'm really going to do is operate from the point of view that we know there is a network of projects, and I won't be going into much detail about them. So for those of you who are less familiar, when we get to the discussion time, please do ask questions and we'll be able to dig into it more together. Dan, great to see you. I didn't get to tell you, by the way, I like your new haircut. It's looking good, man.
I have to say, it was, I don't know if you can hear me or not. My audio is off. You can hear me?
It's still doing the cutting out thing a little bit.
Yeah, I don't get it. Oh, well. All right, I'm going to get off.
But dude, I want to talk to you soon. So let's make time to chat, okay? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation part so we can then have plenty of time for discussion. So let me get that started right now. So as I was saying, the thing that I want to emphasize today is what it means to weave a tapestry of projects. And what you can see in this image here, this is from Google Earth, where I had created a presentation with 17 locations or themes that were in a presentation on Google Earth that I had used to invite people into our bioregion for the Refi Barichara event. And I just wanted you to see this image to recognize that there are different shapes and patterns on the land, and each of them represents different kinds of projects. And what we're going to be talking about is when there is a landscape like this is a plateau that's on the right, a deforested plateau, and on the left is the river Rio Suarez. Its indigenous name is Rio Saravita. Barichara is where that blue line comes down to the yellow squiggly shaped thing, which is with the waterfall, Salto de Mico. So Barichara is right there. And what I want you to just see is that when you use the land itself as your organizing principle, everything has a place, and those places relate to each other in interesting ways. And we want to talk about how to relate projects to each other within a landscape. So with that in mind, I just want to draw attention to 4 of those 17 projects that are in that map. So Bioparque Moncora, which is right on the edge of the town of Barichara, Origen del Agua, the nature reserve that we crowdfunded to raise money for, that is at the top of the ridge line and the groundwater supply, the aquifer system of the town of Barichara. The Barichara Ecoversity being located on the land of Las Albercas below the cliff at the bottom or in the middle of a drainage where we want to restore a watershed. Ojo de Agua and Cane Calibri, which is the community theater project in another part of the landscape. So I just want to emphasize that there are many projects like this. Each of them has a place and has a richness and has a theme. And we're working really coherently, I would say, not quickly or slowly, but coherently to bring these kinds of projects together. And I wanted to use a physical example of something that I did earlier this week to give you a sense of how we're going to talk about tapestries of projects. So what you see here is my pickaxe. This is in the food forest in the bioparque. And that log you see on the right was a large branch on an acacia magnum tree that I cut because I was doing chop and drop. I was cutting off branches that are drying out and then breaking them apart and turning them into mulch and vegetative material for growing soil. And there was this large branch. What I decided to do with this large branch, because it was so big, was I wanted it to decompose slowly into soil while creating a garden bed. So on the uphill side, I started digging a hole and then piled the dirt around the log and then started gathering some vegetative material, some mulch that would begin to do ground cover so that we create a garden bed. And the reason I wanted to start with this is if you're going from a place-based perspective, then what you can do is you can take the things that are nearby in space and bring them together in a way that starts to stack their functions so that the different functions like the decomposition of the wood to bring nutrients into the soil, together with the shape of the land and the shape of the hole, which has the function of gathering water during the rain, and then clipping bushes and creating a layer of mulch, which helps hold moisture in the soil, that all of these are different functions that connect together on the landscape. But then what happened was later, this is a picture from the courtyard in my house. See, there's this really nice orange tree. It's mandarin orange tree. But around the orange tree, several native trees started growing when their seeds landed from the wind. So the seeds landed and the trees started growing and they're sitting in this contained place where they're isolated from the rest of their environment. So what I did the other day was I took this tree right here, which is a type of tropical cedar, and I pulled it out of the ground and then I planted it in that garden bed. And what I want to show you is that the connectivity of different functions that integrate into the land is the way of thinking. This is like the permaculture principle for how we can connect together different kinds of projects, where we want all of their nutrients and their energy to flow together. Whereas if they're isolated the way they are in my courtyard, surrounded by stone and they can't connect, there's no circulation. They're just like little contained small pieces of activity, but they're not able to integrate into the landscape the way that this happened after transplanting this tree. And it's this way of thinking that we can do to look at projects in the landscape and help them connect with each other. So this is something that I did on Twitter earlier this week. I've done this before and it's been really interesting. As I just posted on Twitter on November 20th, is there anyone out there who would like to donate $3,000 to help a new education project with children take off in Barichara? Its focus is on how to restore an entire watershed with the Barichara River. And less than 24 hours later, a group of people who are wanting to help us with fundraising stepped forward and said they would give us $3,000. And this was because we had a kind of social connectivity between us where social media and our relationships created this connections. This is like an ecology of information and an ecology of purpose in the social sphere that functions similar to that transplanted tree. And this is the project that those $3,000 are going to. It's called Pozos de Agua, which means steps of water. And this is a project where they're creating educational strategies across the entire Barichara River, a watershed of about 30,000 hectares of drainage, where they've been forming a group of people with some money I'd raised with crowdfunding earlier in the year to fund a woman named Milena to gather people and create an advisory council for education, regenerative education across the territory. And now a group has formed that is gestating, creating, and expressing a vision for how the children dreaming of restoring the watershed can actually bring the watershed back to life. And so this is the project that they're funding. And what I want you to notice here is that the narrative of children walking across the landscape, connecting to different parts of the river, the narrative functions in the same way as that transplanted tree. It brings nutrients and resources from one part of the landscape to another through social connectivity in the activities of children and education programs, held together in the structure of a story, which is the story of walking across the watershed to bring it back to life. And so this way of thinking allows this project, which is like a children's educational project, to become a tapestry that can weave with other projects, so that we can start to see that the projects are not isolated from each other. They're actually deeply connected. And then there's this. For those of you who know, back in early October, we participated in the 15th matching round of Gitcoin, and our project for regenerating the Barichara bioregion came in number 4. Which means out of all the projects that were in the matching round of climate solutions, we came in number 4. And if you like this article, Maximizing Success as a Grantee Using Collaboration, this is an article that was just published yesterday. And so you can go and find it on the Gitcoin website. But what happened was this: we raised $21,000 in October. And now we've created a pathway to convert cryptocurrency to Colombian pesos to be able to direct it into the local projects. We've created a linkage between different kinds of financial systems using a MetaMask crypto wallet, working with a money exchange that converts crypto into fiat, connecting it to a local foundation that can receive and manage the money and administer it to our local projects, so that we can bring this money to our territorial foundation that we've been creating and use the money as a leverage for conversations about governance. How does that work? $21,000 is about 100 million Colombian pesos. And so that's a lot of money that we can weave into projects by having the representatives of those projects gather together and sit in a council with each other and say, how should they spend this money across all of their projects? So the money is coming in to cultivate the governance, the decision-making capabilities with a collection of projects. We have about 20 projects right now, where everyone knows each other. They all are friends. They understand each other's projects. They've been visiting each other's land. There's a lot of social connectivity. There's a lot of trust, so that when money comes in like this, the context is prepared for the money to flow across the projects. What they need is a way of making decisions, and they have a motivation to create their way of making decisions as the money arrives. But also, just this week, and Jonathan, who's on this call representing Possible Planet, our fiscal sponsor in the US, has just received a $10,000 donation, a $10,000 grant from the Mustard Seed Trust that is allocated to the syntropic agroforestry work. And so in addition to the Gitcoin money, which will help people make decisions together and create governance and funding as a tapestry that weaves projects, this funding is going to do something different, which is these $10,000 for syntropic agroforestry are going to allow us to connect locations across the land using syntropic principles. This picture you see here, this is something that took place on the land Orihindalagua last week. So the nature reserve that Earth Regenerators raised money to purchase. Last week, they did a technical field site visit to clean up one of the natural springs. There's a well spring on the land of Orihindalagua. And there were about 20 or 25 people doing a work party to learn more syntropic agroforestry techniques on this piece of land.
Listening in on a call with your
And
meeting, you're part of.
Miguel, if you could maybe mute yourself. Or maybe I could do it real quick.
Another beautiful day.
Let me do this just to be sure that we don't have any noise problems. There we go. I'll jump back in. Now, what I want to show you here with this part of the project is that what you can see, if you look at this map in the lower left, is that these are the 3 locations where we are establishing demonstration sites, community projects where we set up a syntropic agroforestry demonstration using workshops, where we have about 30 people come together and establish a demonstration site and then do continual maintenance of it. So we have 3 locations in different parts of the landscape, and each demonstration project is emphasizing a different focus in terms of what syntropic agroforestry can do. But because there are 30 participants in each workshop, We already have 2 workshops that have been completed and about 50 participants in total. Many of those people actually have field sites, meaning they have their own land or their own regenerative projects. And so we're starting to organize a series. Actually, we've been running them for a few months, and we're going to be doing a lot more, where across this landscape are many pieces of private land or community projects where people are sharing knowledge about syntropic agroforestry. So here you can see we're weaving projects through technical training and work exchanges on different pieces of land using syntropic agroforestry as our weaving process. So you can see that you can have a tapestry of projects through technical knowledge and a learning community, which is what's happening in this case. But then at the larger level, we're birthing a planetary network of regenerative bioregions. On this map, I've only shown landscapes where we have active conversations about collaboration. In the bottom right, way down there is Barichara. Then there's Osa Peninsula there in Costa Rica. As you come up the map, you'll see a cluster of places in the middle of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. And then way up at the top on the left is the Cowichan Valley, where Claire Atwell and other collaborators in Earth Regenerators are starting to activate things in their bioregion. And we're collaborating with each other through bioregional activators and previously through bioregional catalysts in Earth Regenerators. And so we have this growing network of projects where in this case, the projects are bioregions. What's interesting about this is in the last few weeks, Benji, Penny, and myself, we got together, and in the span of 8 days, we visited 4 bioregions in Colorado. One of them in Rollinsville, which is an ecological corridor, in Carbondale, which is the Roaring Fork River Valley, Paonia, which is the Gunnison River Valley, and the Front Range, which is where the mountains transition into the Great Plains near Denver and Boulder. And as we were looking at each of these pieces of land, each of these is about a 500,000 hectare, the Front Range is even bigger, but Rollinsville, Carbondale, and Paonia each represent about 500,000 hectares of land for each of their areas, that we were able to engage socially in looking at each of them and connecting them with each other. And so as we talk about how to create value flows within bioregions and across bioregions, I'd encourage you to go and look at my YouTube channel and watch this video, Value Flows in a Bioregional Funding Pool, which explains what I'm about to discuss in more detail. But I just want you to know that we're developing processes and frameworks for how to create tapestries of projects within landscapes and across landscapes. And one element of this that's really important is that we're gathering together strategic philanthropy together with different ways of pooling resources using Web3 and crypto tools, traditional fundraising, and crowdfunding, so that we can create resource flows into a portfolio of local projects, like we're doing in Barichara, and allowing those local projects to self-organize at the landscape scale by governing themselves, just as what's happening here in Barichara with the Territorial Foundation. So while we weave tapestries of projects within each bioregion, like we're doing with syntropic agroforestry, we're also weaving tapestries of projects across clusters of bioregions, like helping the people on the Front Range of Colorado who have deep knowledge, expertise, and there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money in places like Boulder, to be able to bring resources and capacities to places like Carbondale and Paonia, whereas the people in Carbondale and Paonia have demonstration sites and learnings and living laboratories to study and practice that can bring inspiration and knowledge to the Front Range, so that we can create these kinds of collaborations in a sustained manner across a larger region, where the region is a cluster of bioregions. And so we're already doing this work. It's already begun. And that's what I want to talk with you all about. Which is, I want to talk with you all about how do we do this work to weave bioregions at 2 levels, helping projects come together and form tapestries, which we're learning to do using the Common Lands model of landscape partnerships and landscape plans, drawn from the larger body of practice in integrated landscape management, together with all the work we've done with pro-social to create effective groups and cooperation at different scales. And now we're beginning to activate bioregions and create exchanges between them, like what recently happened in Colorado. And you can see that so far, at least, it seems to be working. And as we bring more resources into Barichara, we'll have more to teach and to showcase to other bioregions. and bring that so that we can speed up the processes for other places. And so this is the conversation I want to have with all of you is, what does this stir up for you? What are your questions? What are your insights? What are ways that we can do this in the bioregions where you are? And so I want to just have open discussion about all of this. And also specifically, I want to invite either Benji or Penny to share more of their perspectives about what's been happening and is starting to accelerate in Colorado, because something really exciting is going on there. I just didn't want to emphasize it in today's conversation. But I'd love to just open up the floor to either Benji or Penny if you'd like to share, or any questions or comments.
I can share a little bit because I've had some ongoing conversations with Marissa and Jeremiah in Paonia as we explore what sustained support might look like. And I specifically had a really good conversation with them a couple of days ago, and what kept coming up over and over in that conversation was, what does it look like? What does the process of developing a landscape partnership look like? How do we begin to weave projects? I think that we've been calling Joe, and Joe's been sort of self-described as a crazy catalyst, right? He's been in Barichara, and he's really gotten deep into relationships and found ways to weave people and projects together in this very intuitive fashion. When we go into other bioregions where there's not necessarily a Joe Brewer, how do and the people are really excited about the Common Land Foundation and the model for integrated landscape management. They're really excited about pro-social, but they're new to all of this. It's just, that's what I'm considering right now. As we try to think of what sorts of conversational containers, practices, educational opportunities we can bring to sustain the energy coming out of the activation process in Paonia and Carbondale. What do those look like? So I just wanted to name that as something that's seems to be a really valuable next conversation to have.
Thanks for that, Benji. I think it's so important to recognize, like, just to name it briefly, one thing that's happened in Paonia and Carbondale is they each had a follow-up meeting. So we came, gave talks and workshops, and then a week later, each location, or they self-organized and had another meeting. And Paonia is now organizing a field trip for everyone to come and visit some other pieces of land and start getting to know each other better. And they're having conversations with Benji and Penny about becoming trained in pro-social. So they're very actively moving forward, taking these steps and weaving it into their local process. And we were there, 2 weeks ago? So it's been 2 weeks since we were there. And a week before that is when we were invited there. This whole thing is like less than a month old, this process in Colorado. And so it's just very interesting to see how quickly it's moving into such practical, dynamic engagement because of how people feel within their own community. Penny, is there anything that you wanted to share? And then
I'll just add to what Benji was saying is one thing I noticed in the follow-up meeting is, like, it's actually revealed in the meeting itself what the next step is. It's like, as long as there's somebody there to reflect back what was just said, like, for instance, in this meeting, people are saying, oh, I want to go visit your project and I want to learn about your project. And it's like, oh, well, that's how it's going to weave. Everybody's actually curious about each other's projects. And then it's just a matter of arranging for that to happen, the visiting of other projects, and that's going to start the weave. And then, so it's just noticing what's happening, and then following that impulse. So it's as long as there's somebody holding the process, which I think is actually key. In this case, in Paonia, they have somebody who stepped up, the person who invited us and her husband, and they're holding the process to just keep it moving. Then it reveals itself as you go in an emergent process. So that's what I'll add. It's really beautiful.
Thank you, Penny. I think it's so important to name that the holding the process is fundamental. And I know, Claire, you've talked about this a lot with community art projects. Holding the process is fundamental. It's absolutely fundamental. Bennett, on to you.
Alrighty. Yeah, hey all. I know you covered a lot of ground since, but I'm still just stuck on that first metaphor you made, Joe, and that the potency of that statement, the ecology of purpose there. I was involved in the Denver permaculture scene my time up there, and I feel like I can somewhat speak to what's going on there. Adam is a good friend and a mentor of mine, and yeah, it's very much the case there. Like the plants in the courtyard, you know, there's these people with these amazing intentions doing this great work, but they're almost kind of isolated in their own endeavors. They're spending all their energy just trying to gather a cause and gather momentum around their own, you know, vision. And they're also kind of siloed in their immediate surroundings. It's so easy for them to just be in the front range because there's so much going on there, and, you know, the busyness of the city. So yeah, they're creating these pockets of abundance and healing and doing this great work, but they're not woven together and connected in this way that you've illustrated is just so pertinent and so important for the work at hand. So yeah, I just think highlighting that and how we really need to fractal out and kind of do both of these local weaving of processes and also these global region weaving of bioregions at the same time. It's just the two are so interconnected and we can't do one without the other. So I just wanted to say that really stuck with me and that really landed. So thank you for that phrase there. Ecology of purpose I'm gonna be holding that one for quite some time.
Wait, I'll just add one comment before passing over to Claire, which is that when we were in Rollinsville with Alex Corin, it was so obvious that just naming Rollinsville, Paonia, and Barichara, just those without everything else, 1.5 million hectares of land. Like, to tell the story of those 3 bioregions, it would be so much easier to raise larger amounts of money than no matter how exciting Barichara is. And it was like, duh, we need to do both. And so I just wanted to really, really emphasize that while we don't need each person doing both, we need to ensure that both processes, both levels of process are held. I think that's really the key.
Mm-hmm.
And now on to Claire.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on something that, yeah, loved what you were saying, and just kind of adding on to what you were saying is creating the conditions by building trust. And often I feel attending the groups that are in the bioregion, the projects that they're presenting on when they've got a big event or whatever it is, going there in person, showing up, not just like being in person makes such a big difference. All the people, the dynamics that you're able to witness and be part of, maybe some key questions you can ask. I'm not seeing that. Pencil
I just
crayons?
want people to know that Elise is about to do stuff with colored pencils, and I thought Claire would approve.
Yeah, that's
why
a
I'm moving
good
around.
set.
Elise asked me to move her colored pencils. I apologize. No, I don't. I don't apologize. Please continue.
No, that's great. Art anytime. Yeah, no, just showing up in person and on someone else's sort of in their stomping grounds shows an interest in their activities and what they're focused on. And that, like, the amount of goodwill that builds, especially when it's like pretty, sometimes you never know when it's actually going to be a pretty important piece. So that when you do the steps that you've done, Joe, there's kind of the conditions have already been created for that trust. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because those are the things that if I have to pull out threads of gold that have kind of come back to really solidify why things are able to come together, it's because and really there's a few of us in my region who do this pretty regularly, and we have so much to draw from when we're trying to pull those bigger, like catalyze the events. So anyway, I just wanted to speak to that.
I've got my little catchphrase now is we move at the speed of trust. I don't know if I made that up, if I heard it from someone. It's just been in my mind for so long. I don't even remember where it came from. But it was amazing in Paonia. Like the people there didn't even know how much they trusted each other. It was sort of amazing. And what's happening in Barichara is partly because I spent 3 years as an outsider building lateral trust, meaning lots of people trusted me and they had various levels of trust with each other, depending on the individual relationships. But the trust they all shared with me, when I brought money from the outside, that trust leveraged into them trusting each other more deeply. And so, which is when the Barichara Regeneration Fund was created. That was huge. And I couldn't have appreciated beforehand how huge. But looking back, I'm like, oh my God, I've seen so many times where people spend a year just like deciding how they're going to make decisions about what they're going to do together because they don't really trust each other enough. Whereas when we have such deep connection to purpose in the land, the little black one, I think is right in here in the front somewhere. Maybe look. And so, yeah, just really reiterating how important that is. And I wonder, are there any other questions or comments that people have? Certainly can tell more stories. Benji, please.
I just want to reflect for just a moment longer on this trust thing, because it's so interesting. After we went to Paonia and Carbondale, and I guess I've got a little bit of exciting news. I've been invited by Marissa and Jeremiah to move to Paonia and to help out on the ground, and I'm just blown away at the speed of that foundation of trust being formed. And I think that there's something really important to name here, in that, you know, we just brought so much authenticity and excitement and love and this deep shared connection to healing, you know, the planet, right? And we connected so deeply with these people in these mountain communities, and I was blown away by how quickly I felt like a part of these communities. I mean, still an outsider, but like in the process of being welcomed in. And it's just, yeah, Claire just reminded me of that in a couple of the things that she said. I think that there's something really like powerful and just something I wanted to celebrate there. You're muted, Joe.
Yeah, so I'm trying not to make noise with Elise drawing next to me. Yeah, sweetie.
Gotcha.
Oh, that's a really nice one. I think that'd be beautiful. I see. This looks kind of like craters on the moon. Sweet. She's drawing patterns that are on her sweatpants. And there are stars and moons and all kinds of fun things. So one thing that I want to maybe emphasize about the relationship between resources, intentions, purpose, and power is that the power is when resources arrive to give energy to intentions that already exist, whereas those intentions were not yet fully expressed. So there's sort of an invigoration that happens as they become expressed, and that gives rise to clarity of purpose. That actually there is an implicit purpose between lots of projects. Like in Paonia, a lot of people are trying to restore the health of their watershed for the North Fork of the Gunnison River. They have a shared purpose, but there is not an expressed shared purpose. They haven't talked to each other to find out they all share the purpose. But when the intentions are shared, but not expressed, and then the resources begin to appear to mobilize the expression of intention, that shared purpose emerges. And as that shared purpose emerges, it creates multi-directional inspiration.
Look how little when I color
Well, that's so nice. Oh, it's so small. That's precise. Precise means you did it really, really small and really good. And so the way the energy can work is like people inspire each other by their projects. Like, oh, wow, I want to come visit your ranch because you're doing biodynamic farming and it's connected to the watershed too. And they're inspired that they know of someone else's project. And also they're inspired that they know each other. And they're inspired that they're not alone because they agree. And they're inspired because they actually have more resources than they realized. Like, oh, I can leverage that 100-acre ranch. I don't even have to own it. That guy does, but we're collaborating for the same intention, and the shared purpose begins to emerge. And this is why in the common land model, where they talk about 4 returns, you know, common land is really more about creating a shared language more than anything else. They just want to be able to talk in the same way about different landscapes. So the 4 returns are return on inspiration, return on social impacts, return on nature, and return on money or financial return. And what they found in practice is that 10 to 1, the single most valuable return is return on inspiration. It's the most difficult to measure. It's most difficult to name what it is, but it is the most important one to have. If you don't have inspiration, you don't have a dynamic engine, a cultural engine for everything else that occurs. Inspiration brings money. Inspiration brings social impact. Inspiration brings ecological impact. And so this is a really important thing, is this energy of shared alignment expressed through purpose, which is a pro-social process, right? It's a pro-social process, is what releases that inspiration. Whoa, that's awesome. RJ, please.
It's noisy here, but I just want to add, there's something new in the universe in addition to everything you've said, and it's that everything is speeding up because of our technology and our connections. So this is going to be a very fast decade, and we're right in the middle of it. I think we're just in the beginning of it. But that's really important, how we can talk to one another. That's about it.
Thank you for that, RJ, because one thing that we saw with that $3,000 gift to Pasos de Agua, that happened because there are some people that reached out to me a month or so ago about exploring how they could mobilize money for our projects and collaborate. And then they were ready after that conversation to step forward. And then we stepped into a conversation about something much bigger. And we had a conversation about this earlier this week. And so what we can feel is that we find this alignment around intention and purpose, and we find we like each other, and the trust grows more quickly. Now, we still have to do all the hard work of, meaning these are real relationships. We want to become real friends. We need to actually know each other. So it's important to spend the time and build that trust in a genuine and sustained way. But the impulse to trust is more readily available when we're in this place of alignment around purpose. So it's just naming that the technology tools speed that up, but that's actually why it happens. Roberta, hope you can speak while you're driving. What are you driving?
Yeah, oh, I'm not driving.
Oh, good. You're not in England. Okay, never mind.
I would never do that. Can you hear me okay? I think it's going through the car radio. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so one of the dilemmas that I'm feeling is I hope you can maybe address a little bit, Joe, and this might be a conversation for another day, like a broader conversation. But in my professional background, which I left 5 years ago, we focused a lot on integrated scales of landscapes. So inside of that, cities have to be connected to larger landscapes because there's so many ways that cities can bring back ecology, and that's what I've been focused on, urban ecology at lots of scales. And so I'm wondering if there are any bioregional projects or collaborations or meetings that you're aware of that also integrate cities. That's kind of where I'm feeling a little stuck because my own personal connection is so much to this urban connection to larger landscapes and how we need to reconnect corridors.
Yeah, this is a huge question, and there are 2 parts to it. One part is there are 0 examples of sustainable cities in history. So that means anytime we work with cities, it's really complex and messy.
Yeah.
So, which I know you know, I just wanted to name that for everyone. It's always complex and messy with cities. Now, that said, when I was part of the Regenerative Communities Network back in 2019, there were 16 bioregions that were in the network at the time. The 2 that were the most advanced in trying to integrate cities were the Boulder area with the Front Range food shed, and the Hudson River Valley, which provides a lot of regenerative agriculture to the New York metropolitan area. And so these were, and these were both bioregions with incredibly complex situations, as Bennett was already naming with the fragmentation that exists in the Denver Boulder area. And at the same time, like in Boulder, there was a group called I think they're called Cityscape, if I remember the name. They're actually a research group that collaborates with UC Boulder that does urban planning through computer simulation. So they do computer simulation of climate, soil changes, supply chains, these sorts of really advanced research projects with computers that are usually housed at universities or national labs or something. Yes, I can, in just a moment. Okay, let me finish saying this and then I'll draw stuff. And so you can see how that level of capacity at university will really help. But that didn't actually help them make the landscape more sustainable necessarily. It might have just created the frustration of seeing what's needed and then also seeing how difficult it is to accomplish. And so, I know, Elise, I know, but I just want you to, I know, but I want you to wait for just a moment longer, then I'm going to draw lots of white stars. And so what I think is going to be really important is that we have two levels of strategy that are going to be key. One is, how do we help the less entrenched landscapes? So the Paonia to Boulder, Paonia is much less entrenched than Boulder is. So we want to help Paonia get way out ahead so that when the rest of the globalized system continues its collapse and Boulder and Denver have less entrenched infrastructure, which means horrible things have occurred, they'll actually be able to learn better from what's happening across the mountains. And so, okay, I'll do that, Keller, too. So part of the strategy is to help bioregions recognize that they can leverage each other to help themselves in the future. That's actually Boulder investing in Paonia will help Boulder in the future. So just learn to think this way. This is going to be really key. And then the second is that the thing that cities have is highly educated people, lots of money, and lots of knowledge, lots of capacity, infrastructure. The infrastructure is exactly why they cannot create regenerative economies. But universities, research centers, like in Boulder, there's the Dryland Agroecology Research Group and Elk Run Farm, and it's like these beautiful pieces of infrastructure. Thank you. That can be leveraged to other landscapes in collaborative ways. And like when we were talking with United Ecology, which is a team in Boulder that does 100-acre or larger landscape restoration, they only exist because multimillionaires and billionaires can afford to hire them to bring tractors and build contour swales on their hobby farms. But those are exactly the people who can train a legion of landscape restoration in the rest of the whole Central Rockies. And so to take something like Dryland Agroecology or United Ecology, which are both in Boulder, which have really good training capacity, to be able to train people that then go and practice in Paonia or in Carbondale, where they don't depend as much on billionaire funders for their hobby farms. And so we have to find these really creative ways to have these relationships. And each landscape is going to have its own challenges in doing this. But this is like where you are, Claire, connecting with the University of Victoria, but how? And so just to think in this multi-directional way this is why this is more like playing Go than it's like playing chess. It's a higher dimensional space for strategies. And so I just want to share that to nudge us along, but we should definitely talk more. It's a huge topic.
Thanks. That's a great beginning.
Yeah, lots to think about. Claire.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what you've just said, but that was happening for me in Victoria. So for decades, I've worked in Victoria and really trying to do, I didn't have the framing of bioregionalism, but really trying to do that work and realizing eventually that I was banging my head against a brick wall because there were certain impediments that weren't allowing it to come together. I had enough connections and roots in Cowichan to recognize right away they're ready to have these conversations in a way that they weren't in Victoria. And from my perspective, it would be like working with people that were really ready to go. I imagine there's lots going on in Victoria, but it will help to catalyze that conversation in Victoria in a way that you couldn't do by trying to do it from Victoria, in my perspective. So I just wanted to say exactly, and there's a lot more money. There's just like incredible resources in Victoria, but they're just, the pro-social is not there. Whereas it's really up and functioning in Cowichan, but lots of other stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to echo exactly what you just said there, Joe.
Yeah, I'll just add one quick comment before going back to Roberta, which is that when I was working earlier a few years ago with people like Jordan Greenhall and Daniel Schmachtenberger and those kinds of guys who work on existential risk. And they're trying to solve they're saying there are existential risks that could cause humans to go extinct. It's so pretty. Yeah, Elise has something really cute. Really cute. Keep going. It's okay. You're gonna erase that? Do it again?
That had,
The kids are so important in all of this.
Daddy, there was
Yeah.
smaller ones.
Yeah,
I'm glad I got this one
yeah,
because there was some other ones there.
Yeah.
and That were the circle.
oh yeah, the star one is way prettier. So one of the things that that Daniel and Jordan talked about was that they were doing computer simulations. They were doing research with the Santa Fe Institute, which is where complexity science was formalized. And they were asking questions about what are the different existential risks and how do we create resilience against those risks? And so one of the things that they looked at was distance from urban centers. And I remember having this conversation with Jordan Greenhall where he said, I've created a new parameter for existential risk, which is how far are you from the nearest international airport? And he found the sweet spot was 3 to 5 hours. If you're less than 3 hours from an international airport, then there are all kinds of globalization risks connected with cities. And if you're more than 5 hours away, you're too disconnected from the innovation scene of the city. And that they found the sweet spot was to be 3 to 5 hours away in this particular study they did. And now there was a study, I wouldn't want to read too much into it, but what an interesting heuristic.
Daddy,
I'm here in Barichara, 4 hours away from the Bucaramanga airport.
Daddy.
And this innovation connection is strong. And so thinking of Victoria in a similar way, you know, to go 3 or 4 hours away, like our eco village is what, 2 hours away? I don't remember exactly, something like that. But this connection is really interesting.
Daddy.
Hold on, sweetie, because I want to ask if there are any other questions or comments that people have. That's right, Benji. Peonia is about 4 hours away from Denver. Similar heuristic by crossing the mountains. Are there any other comments or questions or topics that we'd like to explore? Erase those two? We can try. Let's see if it works. In the meantime, I'm going to erase these little craters on this planet that Elise was
It's
making.
not a planet.
Is
It's
it?
a sun.
It's a sun. Oh, are those sunspots? Sweet. Oh, I see. Yeah, then those are sunspots. So if there aren't more questions and comments, we can go ahead and start a wrap up, or we could do a round of sharing. And I actually would like, if there's interest, for us to just do a round of sharing, which is simply that we pass the mic forward so that we can do this in an efficient manner, and just maybe share one thought or reflection. It could be, I'm feeling this way. That was really insightful for me. I'm going to think about this more. So just something like 1 or 2 sentences and do a round as a collective mapping, just for us to just feel into what everyone is thinking and feeling. And
Make a little pink honeycomb there.
I could make a little, what color do you want it?
This
This color, and where do you want it? So you want a moon like this one?
right here.
Okay, there you go. There's a little teeny tiny moon.
No, but not facing down.
Uh-oh, she didn't like the way I did it. This happens sometimes with Elise. So what I'd love to invite is a round of sharing, just like an insight you have, a question that you're holding from this, a feeling you're having about it, and then pass it to the next person. And if there's anyone who can't participate, like Megan said she may not be able to contribute, then you can just like maybe type into the chat the name of the next person, and so that you can still participate, and you can write your thought there. So I will start by having and Dan, you as well, if you'd like to type something into the chat so you can go ahead and start thinking about it. I would like to share the reflection that I see this, this process helping us to show bioregions how to be bioregions. And I think this is going to be really important, is to show people how they could already be organizing themselves this way by seeing examples. And to me, that feels really, really potent. And then I will pass it forward to Irvi.
Thank you. I need to leave at the top of the hour, so I was hoping you were going to call on me early. I'm really taking away the thing Penny said, which sounds so simple, but it was so helpful to have her kind of restate it, which is in any given context, what needs to happen next is kind of just usually named in the conversation itself. And it's just about being open and attentive and sort of following that. And that's just such a helpful pointer for bioregional work, but also just navigating through life. I'll pass to Richard.
Yeah, thanks, Evie. Yeah, I'm left reflecting about trust and the speed of trust that you said, Joe, and just really relating to that in my own local examples where, as the group I'm part of, we didn't feel we had a level of trust with a landowner to progress at the moment. Didn't feel that kind of shared purpose. Whereas with other connections, that's there and strong, and you can just go with something straight away. I'd love to see you, Penny, Benji, anyone else in the UK as part of a Euro tour sometime. So I will pass on to Claire.
Thank you. I think my main reflection is just, it makes such a difference to hear the diversity of perspectives as we kind of rework and talk about this, because it just brings up a sense that there's a coherence coming, and it's this work can sometimes feel so, people have got so many different perspectives, and it can be overwhelming and feel like it's never going to come together. And then when I come to a place like this, and there's this sort of, it's like, what do you call it? The strange attractor in chaos theory. It just feels like we're holding something very, very special. Matthew.
Claire, thank you. This is my first time here, and I've been I've spoken to Joe a couple of times, and we've been following the project, and I've been learning more and more about it. I think my reflection is just the topics you guys are speaking about, that the work that you're doing, the fact that these bioregions are coming together and seem to be working together, and I see that there's challenges there. I'm just sort of overall, very, very inspired, and I'm keen to learn more and get to know you all. So thank you for allowing me to be part of this. Really appreciate it.
And would you like to pass it forward?
Yes, I am going to pass it on to, I was going to say iPhone 2, but let's go for Benji, because I don't know iPhone 2's name.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. Boy, there's just so many things that I could reflect on right now. I guess I'll just keep it simple, brief. I think we're getting much better at telling the story. I think there's so much clarity coming to it. I can see it clear every day. And I was writing, I think, an article the other day, and I was talking about this process of bioregional activation. And it's funny that Joe brought this up a little bit earlier. You can see it as activating, but you can also see it as cohering. Like there's this latent energy, there's this potential that just wants to come together, just needs the right perspective, the right story. And so I just feel we're about to just go over an edge, and it's just going to happen in so many places. People, like so many bioregions want it, and it's right there. And I'm really excited. And I'm trying to write and bring clarity in that way and serve in that way as well. And I think the more of us that tell the story from our unique perspectives as well, the more we'll sort of triangulate that and reach new audiences. And so I want to encourage that as well. So I'll leave it at that. And Bennett from Taos.
Yeah, I'll just get a little personal with it. the presence of Elise and the constant little asides has just reminded me, and that like the interruptions are just part of the process. Like I've been kind of half in the conventional mindset, half out, like trying to move in that direction of just like being more firmly in that space that we're all going to need to be in for holding this. And yeah, just like the constant like, oh no, I'm not quite fully there yet, I have to go do something else, wrap up this loose end or attend to this thing. It's just, it's part of it, it's all part of it. So it helps me, you know, feel a little better about the time I might have wasted, you know, doing other things. And I'm feeling inspired and invigorated by all you lovely people. So thank you. Let's go, Ricardo.
Thank you, Bennett. There's something I felt since the Barichara refi, and it's how this community, this fellowship, it's flowing in a smooth and easy way. And, you know, I wonder through the years, what's the right thing to do? Where's the, you know, the right tree to take shelter, and the right project, you know? And it's been kind of a fight and a struggle. And during the last weeks or months, being around this work that you are doing is, you know, I feel, you know, it's like the real thing. It's like the pieces of the puzzle are getting into place, and it might be some other communities working on doing the, you know, the real thing also, but this feels kind of like, you know, like the right place to be. Okay, so I really want to thank you all for that. I'll be pretty soon in Barichara. Hopefully, I'm going to see some of you. And I pass it to, help me out. I got my device and it's small. Who? Roberta. Yes, please. Mhm.
I think Roberto may
Roberta,
be driving.
Okay, I'm here. I'm here.
you're
Can you
driving.
hear
Okay.
me?
Yes.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Sorry, I was typing and it was hard to get back to the Zoom. Typing a message. Yeah, so what I'm feeling is really grateful and inspired. And also this real tension for myself between like knowing that the work I do that's very hyper local around, you know, growing native landscapes and spreading the gospel of that. And right now driving out into the way suburbs where you're seeing like the march of progress, and it's just so painful to see. And it's just a reminder of how these fragmented approaches will never work, and the lack of really getting the landscape approach. And so it's just living in that tension right now.
Thank you, Roberta. Maybe we'll pass it forward to Eduardo. Eduardo, are you there?
I am just let me share my video for a moment.
Hola, bienvenido.
Yeah, well, I have several reflections as well, but I'll limit it to a couple. First one is the process, right, of the process of transformation in metamorphosis. That's what we're living right now. I mean, we're living two potentialities. One is manifested and the other one is unmanifested. And the one that is manifested is exhibiting already signs of death and collapse. And this is actually activating the more coherent state of the more coherent potentiality and bringing it into manifestation, which is obviously pretty amazing to see happen. I'm stuck in seeing just a few years ago a great subdivision community and how beautiful it looked like. And I look at the same thing today, and all I see is a mutilated forest. So it's that's one, and the other one is related to the underlying message of seeing you, Joe, here with your children. It's pretty nice. It is pretty nice, which is a reminder of like, hey, let's bring the closest ones to us together into this journey. Share with them as well.
Along those lines, Elise just made this blue sun with sunspots and a moon in front of it.
It's not finished yet.
But it's not finished yet. So I just wanted to share that.
Very
Were you
cool. I don't know
finished
if there's
with-
anybody else. I'm on a very small screen, so I don't know. I don't see
Well,
everybody.
I think that there's still Jonathan, who is called iPhone. Jonathan, are you there? He's cooking.
Daddy,
Yeah.
could you make this look?
And if Jonathan's not there, then RJ.
Could you make this?
Yeah, I'll just say, as Eduardo said, it's so good to see the children. It's always about the children, really. And when we talk about coherence, it must include the children. It must include the new generation. So thanks. And anyone else?
And
Penny?
Color.
Any?
Yeah. I'm reflecting on how to think of cities differently. With this, like, not thinking of them as sustainable, but thinking of them as like a lot of place for experimentation, and with a lot of resources that can go to other places. So that, you know, like this dryland agroecology is doing a lot of experimentation with swales and all kinds of research that is going to be really useful, and is right now. But we don't have to think of Boulder or Denver as sustainable in like catalyze or leveraging what's there. So that feels really generative to me, and I'm feeling that power. So that's what I'm reflecting on. Did everybody else go?
well, I know Dan is having difficulty with his audio. So, and then Jonathan didn't hear me. So Jonathan, I'll ask you again if you're there. Jonathan, can you hear us? Just to invite you to share if you're there. And if he's not, then we can bring this call to a close today by, I want to share that yesterday I bought airline tickets for a crazy bit of travel I'm about to do. A week from tomorrow, I'm going to fly back to Denver, and then I'm going to spend some more time with Penny because she is locked out of Colombia because of visas. She basically used up her 180 days, so she can't come back till January. And during the time that I'm with her, we're going to make a trip to Carbondale and Peonia, which we'll organize, and probably connect with a few more people on the Front Range. So just know that that's going to happen. My priority is actually quiet time with Penny, but I'm sure some of this other stuff will happen anyway. And then we're all traveling together. I'm going to come back to Colombia, collect Elise after she does the Pasos de Agua 5-day camp, where all the kids are going to be learning about restoring the river. I'm going to come back and collect Elise to fly to Chicago, and Penny's going to fly to Chicago to join us, where we're going to stay at my in-laws' house, and we're going to all go to the amazing museums of Chicago. Those of you who don't know, Chicago probably has the best, Chicago and London, and maybe Paris. It's hard, like there are only a few cities in the world that have these collections of amazing museums all together, but Chicago is one of those places. So we're going to go to the Field Museum and the Planetarium and the Aquarium, and then we're going to rent a car right after Christmas and drive to Missouri, because I haven't seen my family in almost 5 years, and they haven't seen Elise. And Penny's going to get to see the bioregion I'm from, which is the Ozarks, which is why, Roberto, we got to talk. And so that moon, I think that one's lavender, just kind of like this color. What do you think? I think it looks like that one. And so, and then we're going to all fly back to Colombia in the first week of January. And this is just a blend of things, helping to integrate family, travel with Elise, have time with Penny, work on our visas, all the craziness that involves. And just so you know that I'm about to do all that craziness, which will involve Penny and to some extent Elise. And as we're doing that, we're going to keep holding all of this, and it's going to keep moving forward. But the thing I think is going to become really important is how do we do two things? How do we mobilize really diverse flows of money?
Daddy, can
Primarily,
you
it's about,
erase
yeah, I can try. Which is that there are so many, like every other kind of capital exists.
it as much as you can.
And the thing that tends to be a limiting factor in getting things going is financial capital. And it doesn't require very much. But I think we're about to start having a diverse flow of like micro, at least it's not coming out, sweetie. It doesn't seem to be erasing. And so, and connecting that to what is actually the most important flow, which is social capital, which is people connecting with each other and helping. So for example, if I can afford to buy an airline ticket and travel somewhere, which is a really modest amount of financial capital, it will enable me to help catalyze a community process like Paonia, which is primarily social capital. And we're going to see those kinds of activations a lot in the next few months, because the more bioregions that engage in this way, the more we'll be able to tell stories that mobilize more money to keep activating and accelerating. This is an enzymatic process, it's an enzyme. It'll actually accelerate all of the social capital and build more of it. And this is because, as many of you know, we are in a stage of planetary collapse where we have now crossed most of the abrupt climate change thresholds.
Daddy, I'm ready.
And we've already crossed most of the supply chain fragility thresholds. Whoa, you got it all off. Nice job.
No, I didn't.
Oh, you got it almost all off. And we're about to see the volatility in the energy markets that caused food system collapses that were predicted back in the 1970s. Of course, made much worse by abrupt climate change. And so in the next few years, this is going to start happening in a big way, which means we need to create these social connections and trust, friendships, not professional relationships, friendships between bioregions, as many as we can pull off in the next 2 or 3 years. Which is why Penny and I shifted to traveling, even though that's not what we want to do. I want to be anchored as much as I can. I want to be pulling grass and playing with my daughter in Barichara. That's what I want to be doing. But I know this is needed. And there's a very tiny window of time. And so Penny and I are, and actually now we've recruited Benji. We are role modeling how to do this so that more and more people can do this, so we don't have to be the ones to do this. But in the meantime, we're the ones who have to do this until it's an understood model. But I think in another 3 or 4 months, it's going to be understood. I don't think it's going to be long. And so we are developing the processes, communicating them continually, which is why it's insane how fast things are changing. But that's because this is the moment of the quickening. It's either we do it now or it will not occur. The window of occlusion, the window where this becomes impossible, is about to happen. We're about to close off the possibility for this. We've only got a couple of years at best. And so that's why things are going so quickly. And that's why if we need to do something in the Ozarks, the bioregion of my birth, while I'm visiting my family, we will. We'll just add another bioregion and make this even more complex and messy because there's just no time to spare. And so I just want to name this, that there's a time frame that is a planetary dynamic time frame that we're operating within. And most people forget this, or they're just afraid to think about it. But it is, if we don't hold it front and center, we cannot discern our strategies on a day-to-day basis, which is why planetary collapse is essential for getting the strategies right. There are a lot of people doing basically insane things, like just staring at their stomachs or something, focusing on their tiny little projects because they're afraid to look at the big world around them. And this will only work if we do it from what the big world around us says, which is connect to as many bioregions as possible and get the local ones talking to each other as much as possible. Ricardo, necesitamos hablar sobre Mogotes, por favor. Mogotes is a town in our bioregion where Ricardo's family has connections. We need to do this. This is so important. And so I just want to name that in closing today that, you know, we went from Refi Barichara in the first week of October. It's now 6 weeks later, and we are actively working with 4 additional bioregions. implicitly working with several more, like implicitly working with Cowichan, implicitly working with OSA, implicitly working with others. And we need to explicitly collaborate and form these relationships very quickly. So I just wanted to name that it's going to be a wild ride in these next few months. And then it's going to be a wild ride after that for other reasons. And so, so just naming this, that this connection between bioregions is going to be one of the secrets to resilience. For those of you who read my book, there's a chapter called The Magic Elixir, or The Healing Elixir, I forget the exact title. But that chapter was about bioregional interdependence. It was about multiple bioregions interacting with each other and creating interdependence. And this is now the stage we're working on. We're now working on creating bioregional interdependence. It's no longer showcase Barichara because Barichara is a great example. That's going to continue to be the case because Barichara is a great example. But we're leveraging Barichara into other bioregions. We attracted people from around the world to Barichara in October. And so this is about to get crazy.
Could you help me erase this?
And the key is going to be pattern languages of interaction.
Daddy,
You know,
could
what
you
does it
help
mean to
me
enter
erase
into a bioregion and build a landscape team? That's a pattern language. And we're going to learn how to do that and share that as quickly as we can. And then we're going to lean into decades of great landscape scale management work that usually fails because of these entrenchments, which is the bane of Roberta's existence. And we're going to leverage cities into the empty, quote, empty landscapes that globalization doesn't make sense for, like Paonia, because it's too much struck in. Paonia, it just runs right up to the top of the Rocky Mountains full of snow and empties down into the Utah desert. It's really hard to have globalized economy there, but a really great place to do biodynamic farming and organic gardening. And so you can see these other economies are growing, waiting for collapse to occur. And they will spread like crazy once collapse occurs, once globalized economy collapse occurs. Because the entrenchments are what keep them from spreading. Which is why we have to think in terms of compost and nutrient cycling. So I just want to end on that. Not because it's a sobering or scary note, it's actually an exciting note. I mean, notice, it's actually exciting to say, oh my God, I can travel around within my own region and connect multiple bioregions. I can do that. I don't need to be Joe and Barichara to do that. I can do that. And so a lot of people are going to realize this really soon. And they're going to start to see that the glasses you wear to see bioregions are almost the opposite of the glasses you'd wear to move global capital to invest multinational corporations.
Daddy,
You know, oh, it's okay, we'll do another one. Like where that capital flight occurs through extraction, we're going to the places where that doesn't work to introduce this other economic model. And that's exactly where it does. So my daughter needs me, and we've been on here for an hour and 15 minutes. So I'm going to go and help her with her art project, and we're going to have some lunch. Which part? Yes, I can draw that. And so I have really important work to do. Sorry, guys, I got to go. But thank you so much for being here. This is really wonderful. I'm looking forward to playing a lot more together in the days ahead. You now are starting to see what Penny, Benji, and I are doing. So talk to us about how we can do it together in any way that's inspiring for you. Yeah, see, Benji's like, let's make this happen, all right? Thank you, everyone, and onward we go.